It's summer! And Project Always is back on the road. Alright everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name is Blair, and as you can see, it's summer and Project Always is finally back on the road. So as I promised in my last video, I'm going to do a full walk around of this vehicle. I'm not going to get into every single thing, but I'm going to sort of go over really the main areas that I'm going to be tackling this summer, the things that I mentioned in the last video. So some body work, I'm going to be getting into redoing some parts of the interior, overhauling the audio system. I have some new components, namely some new Dynaudio 3-way separates to go in. So it's going to be probably a whole summer's worth of work, but before we really get into that, I think I'll take you guys for a walk around the car, show you the good, the bad, and the ugly, and give you guys sort of a good idea of what Project Always is all about and what I've been sort of building into my own dream car over the last, I guess, almost 12 years now. So with that, let's take a look. Okay, so the car is a 2002 Honda Civic. I purchased this car in December of 2007. It was a one owner at the time, so I am the second owner of the vehicle. This was for a number of years my main transportation. I used it every day back and forth to work, and actually even still now in the summertime I primarily drive this car as long as, you know, the weather's not so bad that, you know, say it's flooding the roads because it's a little low to the ground, so I'd rather not risk it. I'll just take the Tundra if the weather is looking a little nasty. But otherwise, I do use this car quite a bit, and because of that, it's really starting to show a bit of wear and tear. You know, it's a good 20-footer, I think is the word they use. Looks great at about 20 feet away, but, you know, as you get up close, you start to notice some of the flaws. Now, keep in mind, this car's got 276,000 Canadian Canuck kilometers on it. So, you know, for her age, and considering up until about 5, maybe 6 years ago, this car was driven through winters and salt and all kinds of hell. All the hell that the, you know, Ontario, the lovely Ontario weather can throw at us, and it is a lot. It's not looking too bad. Now, it has had some paint and body work before, so I think I will address that first. This front bumper, it is the original, believe it or not. This car was never in any major collisions or really anything that I could find on record. I've been very lucky. I also have not been in any collisions with it, so I'm doing okay. Sorry, as I mentioned, this front bumper has been repainted. It's starting to show some stone chips. I don't know how well you guys can see that because of the time of the day, but yeah, it's okay. I'm going to touch those up. Really, what's going to happen eventually in a couple years is I'm going to repaint this whole car properly, take out all the glass, all the panels, redo everything. But for now, what we're going to do is I have a new lip to go on, so that's being refinished, and it's the correct matching VinWiki lip. This is, I believe, a Type R lip, sort of an aftermarket Type R rendition for this car. So yeah, that's going to go. It's not a bad lip, but I have the correct one now. So moving along to the side here, the paint on this side of the car, on the passenger side, is probably the best of the whole car. I don't believe I've had any paint work done to this side of the car other than the factory side skirts, which I installed, so obviously I had them painted at the time. This whole skirt package on the car, the front, the lower rockers, and the rear lip all went on at the same time. To be clear, none of this stuff is original to this car. These were upgrades sold through Honda. It was a kit that you could buy. It also came on the Canadian Civic SI Veloz. I'm not sure what the American equivalent was. It may have been the same. Don't quote me on that. There are some variances with these cars, but for all intents and purposes, all these 7th gen coupes, pretty much all the same. Powertrain's mostly the same, things like that. So yeah, so basically, like I said, all this stuff I added. This car started its life as, I believe it was a DXG or an LX. It's a little weird when you look this car's VIN number up versus what you see on the registration or insurance slip. So we'll just say it's a DXG. So essentially it has every option that an SI would have, except for the power moonroof and the VTEC. So no VTEC for me, yo. But doesn't really make a big difference. This is a tiny little engine. It's a 1.7, but you know what? It's been very reliable. It's very smooth. No complaints there. So the other thing you can see that I added that's probably fairly obvious there, well, there's a couple of things actually. Well, I guess really it's three things. Namely the wheels. These are a Rotiform NUE. They're 17. Forgive me, I don't remember the offset, and I believe they're a 17 by 7 or 7.5. They're wearing a 215/45 17 or ZR 17, as it were, Michelin Pilot Super Sport. A little bit more tire probably than what this car needs, but you know what? Honestly, for the price, they were not very expensive, and why not go for the best, you know? And also, I'm a Michelin guy. I like the way they ride. They're great tires. I cannot say enough good things about them. Behind the wheel there, you may notice those are not the factory brakes. I always found the biggest weak point on this car, especially as I added weight with the sound system and sound deadening and things like that, were the factory brakes. I warped a lot of rotors on this car, and yes, I am a little heavy on the brake pedal. That's true, but since putting these Wilwoods on probably 6 or 7 years ago, and they were used at the time, I would add, I'm still on the same rotors that the gentleman who sold me the kit sold them with. The pads have been upgraded, but yeah, they're awesome. They're 4-piston, and man, do they haul this car down quickly. So moving on here, this is one of the other main areas of the body that I want to address. So there's the front lip. So I have the replacement lip, as I mentioned. Now here is one of my former repairs that famously did not end so well. This clear coat issue here, where it's kind of, I don't know, it's kind of like flaking up and it looks really hazy. That came later. That happened within the last couple of years. I did this bodywork probably like 5 years ago. It wasn't this bad initially. I was trying to fix a bit of rust at the bottom of the door there. And some of this was my fault, some of it was not doing enough research. I guess it was really all my fault, but not knowing that you need a good quality clear coat, which this time I have purchased. I believe it's an Eastwood 2K. It's a special 2-part clear coat. That's what you want. That is the closest stuff to what they're going to use in a professional auto body shop when they paint your car. So this is one of these things where you really got to spend the time with bodywork, be patient, and spend a little bit of extra money, get the right materials, which I have done this time. So hopefully it's going to turn out better. There's another little area there. Honestly, it's not too bad. I might be able to go in and buff that out. But really, unless you're right down on it, which we are right now, you don't really see it. So in the rear here, not a whole lot to talk about. One thing I would mention that I have done to this car as far as an upgrade, because these cars only came with rear drums. So I have swapped over to obviously a set of discs. These are OEM pads, rotors, calipers, knuckles, and etc. They are from a Acura 1.7 EL, which was a Canadian market only car, although I do believe there was one model of these Civics in the States, possibly the EX, that did come equipped with rear discs. I highly recommend it. At bare minimum, aside from, you know, stopping differences, it just looks a hell of a lot better. Like, who would put a wheel this nice over some crappy, rusty factory drums? Not I. So yes, there we are. As far as suspension goes, you probably noticed the car is sitting a bit lower. Now, I'm not one of these typical, and I hate to use the word racer, because in this day and age, especially now, it's probably a bit derogatory. And now, having said that, I'm really thinking about that. But my point being that I didn't want to follow the trend of most, you know, Honda hot boy cars. You know, I wanted a car I could still drive and enjoy, that looked the part, you know, had that low stance. And I really like the look, you know, of this factory skirt kit, the way it draws your eye to the ground, and especially the really, you know, really deep rear lip. You know, that's just the look I was going for. And mind you as well, with the bigger wheels, this car would have looked silly. It would have ridden really high. It would have been ridiculous. So if you do look here, you know, there is, how many fingers can I get in there? My fingers are big, but, you know, maybe one. That's enough, though. It's more than, you know, most of these slammed cars with camber and all this nonsense do. This car is fully drivable, and really, you know, it's not too bad. I live in the city of Toronto, guys, and our roads are terrible here, and I'm telling you firsthand, having driven this car, put a lot of kilometers on it, you know, since I lowered it back in 2012, it's very comfortable. It's a softer spring rate, so it's really not too bad. So, you know, and actually, you know, just to be clear, overall, I think this car, the suspension was listed at about 1.33 inches below factory. Factor in, you know, sort of the extra height the wheels give you, and I believe the car's sitting maybe about an inch lower than factory, so it looks lower than really what it is what I'm saying. So coming around to the back here, once again, I really did not want to sort of follow the hot boy trend here with a stupid loud exhaust. This car's focus is on sound quality and the audio system, so I did want to get a nice exhaust, and I left this factory actually up until about 2 years ago, when essentially the factory muffler was rotted out, it was toast. So I took it to my favorite exhaust shop in Oakville and had them sort of whip something up, and I just explained to them, I want something that looks nice. I do not want a gigantic tip that you can fit a watermelon in. That's not me. And I don't want a canister muffler. I want a full-bodied muffler that, you know, if anything, has that sort of factory SI sound to it, if anything. So that's actually what they were able to do, and it has a really nice tone to it, but it's quiet and it doesn't drone, and it's a nice looking tip. And you know, it's just an axle back, it's not for performance. Like I said, the factory muffler was toast. I had to replace it, and my whole philosophy is if you're going to replace something, why not upgrade it? So that's what I did. All right, so moving up here, this is another area that I'm going to be addressing along with the body work. So that's going to be the main goal for the month of June. It's going to be fix, obviously, the bottom of the door and the clear coat issues there. Now, this was no fault of my own. I mean, other than maybe just giving this car a little bit too much love and cleaning it over the years. But, you know, you can see the clear coat is kind of chipping off the spoiler there. Honestly, I think it's a little bit thinner how they cleared the spoiler than the rest of the car. I could be wrong. I'm not an expert on these things, but you know, it doesn't look too bad on the sides. But what I'm actually going to be able to do, because if you look closely, you know, the paint is actually in okay shape underneath. So I'm going to attempt to sort of scuff this area up, remove the loose clear coat, and then just re-clear it. And I'm pretty sure I'll be able to come up with a pretty decent result. I've seen a lot of people do it online, you know, even professional body shops do it and have pretty nice results. So my idea really is I'm just going to scuff the clear coat on the top of the spoiler, remove all this loose stuff here, and then I'll probably create like a mask line right along the edge here, and essentially that's where the clear coat, the new clear coat, will come into. And hopefully if I do it well, it'll blend in nicely and you won't even notice it. So, you know, trunk lid, pretty decent shape, you know, nothing that you can probably even see on camera. The roof, this is one of the areas that unfortunately I'm not going to be really able to show you, but there's some clear coat issues there. It has been repainted before, and the issues happened after last year after I parked this car under a tree. And I'm not sure what kind of tree it was, but it left all kinds of weird residue and it etched the clear coat. Maybe you can see that a little bit there. I'm not sure, but take my word for it. The clear coat is etched. So I'm going to do a cut and buff. If I have to wet sand that a little bit, I can. I've taken paint measurements. It's plenty thick. You know, otherwise, it's not too bad. The hood, it's decent enough that I can live with it this summer. I would say, you know, the biggest area when you get right up on it, it's bubbling a little bit there, and it's been doing that for a really long time. But the grille is great. The headlights, beautiful, because they're less than, I guess, 2 years old now. I'm trying to remember when I did them. But yeah, those are in great shape. And as I mentioned before, this side of the car, pretty decent shape. So really, it's just going to need a good cut and buff, maybe a little bit of wet sanding here and there. Obviously on the new areas that I'm going to do some wet sanding on the areas where I'll be doing actual paint touch-ups and clear coat touch-ups. And then when it's all done, I have some Avalon King at home. Thanks to VinWiki for really, you know, recommending and doing sort of a good product review on it by taking his Porsche out in the dirt and doing donuts and really showing how amazing that stuff is, because I was a bit skeptical. But yeah, edit VinWiki. Thank you, sir, and keep doing what you're doing. I love the channel. It's a big inspiration for me. I recommend everybody that watches this channel, if you love cars, check out VinWiki. So I would say that probably pretty much wraps it up for the outside of this car. I guess what I'll do now, because I got the hood popped, I will show you the mighty 1.7 liters of factory fury. If I can actually open my own hood here and get my hood to stay up without killing myself. Whoop. Okay. All right, so there we are. Not a lot going on under the hood. Obviously I added that strut brace. I added it more because I thought it looked cool than anything else. Same thing with the intake. I just felt this car was a little bit too quiet from factory. This is certainly not helping the performance. If anything, it's probably a bit of detriment to the car because of the heat soak. But you know, like I said, the focus on this car is the audio system, and I will show you that shortly. And you know, that for all the years I've had this car and all my other cars has always been my focus. So I want a car that's reliable, is sporty and fun to drive, you know, handles well, stops well. Speed, you know, that is kind of a risky thing for me. I got a lot of speeding tickets when I was younger with my Integra swapped Civic that I used to have. You know, not that that thing was a rocket ship either, but it was faster than this. So with this car, I kind of decided, you know what, I'm going to leave that behind and just focus on every other aspect of the car, which I've sort of been slowly doing. So basically what we're looking at here, just a stock 1.7 liter D17A1, I believe is what it is. We have a fully upgraded electrical system to support the car's audio system and other 12-volt accessories. All the power wire, grounds, everything has been upgraded and re-terminated and is nice and safe, which is very important, especially for the type of competitions that I do. That is a requirement. So with that, actually, you know what? I will add one more thing to this. So my plan for this car is, I've been debating for years what to do when this engine does go and it's getting up there in kilometers. I think what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to find a low kilometer version of one of these engines, like a JDM engine. I'm going to build it up and I'm going to do a little turbo on it. You know, I just think, like, everybody does a K swap. Ks are great. You know, the K series engine is an amazing engine, don't get me wrong, but I'm not one for polyurethane mounts, which you would have to do because those are the only types of engine mounts you can get to mount that engine in this car. And once again, I want a quiet, vibration-free, you know, kind of like my philosophy with this car is I want to build my own little GT car. I want something that's sporty and fun, but comfortable, you know, nice to drive, pleasant. And that just doesn't fit the bill. And plus, I'd probably lose my air conditioning, cruise control, and etc. If I keep the same engine, I'll be able to keep all of my accessories, stick with a stock engine mount so I can have a nice smooth ride, smooth idle, no vibrations, and just add a little bit of boost to it. So probably the next couple years, I'll be doing some videos on that. Okay, with that, I'm going to move to the inside now and show you guys really where all the time has been spent on this car, all the blood, sweat, and tears. All right, well, you'll have to forgive me. Obviously, I picked a wonderful time of day to shoot this at, so we're getting some shadows right now. And just to be clear, this car has not been fully detailed this year. I've been driving it since I got it out. I just gave it a quick bath. I don't think I even vacuumed it. No, let's be honest, I didn't vacuum it. So don't crucify me. Normally, if I take this car to a car show or something, it is absolutely spotless. But remember, this is my show car, but I do use this car. And I enjoy it, as I think you should with any car. It shouldn't just sit in a garage and, you know, be rubbed down with a diaper, to quote Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Great movie. Yeah, so, okay, where to start here? Well, you know what? Let's start in the center stack, because this is one of the areas that I did not execute very well when I did it a few years ago. It stares me in the face every day, and I'm very unhappy with it, so that's getting tackled this summer. So basically, the center panel here, it was a factory piece that I fiberglassed a bezel to accept the aftermarket double-din radio. And let's just say I was a little hasty with the fiberglass and paint, so it cracked. And honestly, I'm not really sold on the silver either. The new theme for this car, I decided, is this lovely gray carbon fiber wrap, which I redid this center console in, which I'll talk about in a moment. So I'm going to fix that up. The head unit's going to stay. That's an Android head unit that I found, and it suits my needs perfectly. It's got an optical out, which is why I got it. So it interfaces with the rest of the system fully digitally. It's honestly, these are great head units. And I'd like to point out, you know, there's been some bad reputations for Android head units of the past for having terrible sound quality and etc. And that was true. But those days are done. This has got a digital output on it. So it'll interface with pretty much any processor that takes a digital in these days. And you get superb quality sound. It's awesome. And I think the deck cost me like $300 Canadian. So it's very inexpensive and you get great bang for the buck. Maybe I'll do a review on that one day. Yeah, so sort of moving down into the center console here, this is not the original console. This is actually one of the upgrades that I just did this year. So the factory center console was actually flat here. There was no armrest and there were cup holders there, but it didn't have that nice little door and that sort of waterfall effect. So I decided that, you know, because it's so easy to get parts for these cars, because this is really the unloved generation and there's so many of them in the scrapyard, it's really easy to get parts for them. So I plucked this console once again out of I think like an 04 Acura EL, the Canadian quote-unquote luxury version of this car, and a couple other pieces off of the Civic from the same generation, namely the parking brake and some brackets and stuff, because that stuff's different. And also, this is the controller for my Alpine H800 processor that's in the truck. That's in the trunk rather. That's the control head. I bought a custom new bracket, or not a custom bracket, but I bought a bracket from Alpine for it. And this was where it was residing in the old console. And you can see that in the Civic evolution video that I posted if you really want to see, you know, the sort of evolution of this car. That's been in there for quite a while, but I redid it in this car, fiberglassed it into the new panel here, and I did this nice carbon fiber wrap, which I'm really happy with. So that center stack, that's going to get wrapped in that same carbon fiber, along with the vents there. And I'm not going to go crazy with the carbon fiber because I'm not a huge fan of that. The only other pieces I'm going to do are the little switch bezels here. So you'll have a little piece on each door. You'll have that nice flow from top to bottom in the center console, and then the vents there as well. The steering wheel as well, quite obviously not factory. I think the Acura logo probably gives that away pretty well. So this is an RSX steering wheel. I'm not sure what year it came out of, but it was given to me for free by my coworker Kenson. Shout out to Kenson, who upgraded his steering wheel to an aftermarket one. So it was just sitting around and he gave it to me, and they bolt right in. And all the cruise control stuff I was able to retain as well, because Hondas and Acuras are awesome that way, and that's why I love this car. Looking down into the driver's footwell area, that is a custom enclosure that I fabricated out of fiberglass, wood, carpet, and etc. It holds a 6.5-inch DLS, I believe it was a Gothia mid-base, if my memory is serving me right now. Same thing on the other side. So I'm going to stick with kick panels when I redo the front end speaker system on this car to accommodate the Dynaudios. I will, however, be building new enclosures because these were my first attempt at kick panels, and I'm not totally happy with the way they turned out. To most people's eyes, they look awesome. I think they could be integrated better, and also they're going to get wrapped in the same suede that, as a matter of fact, the headliner, which is in my Starlight headliner video, that's going to be used exclusively through this car in any soft touch areas, such as the center console, which I did while I had this piece sitting in my house during the winter waiting to get the car out. So it was a perfect time to do that. Likewise, I have a new set of door panels too, because these door panels are going to, well, these are going to get binned. They're not in the best shape. They're in okay shape. But I have another set from a donor car identical to these. I'm going to replace the factory fabric with that same suede, and I'm actually going to be doing some new little enclosure pods here for the Dynaudio speakers that I mentioned earlier. There's a 3-inch and a 1-inch tweeter that I'm going to somehow shoehorn in here with a little teardrop aluminum baffle that I had made by a friend of mine. And that will also replace these A-pillar pods that I built for this car back in the winter of 2011/2012. They've been in this car for a long time. They've had 2 different sets of speakers in them. And you know what? Honestly, they suited my needs for a long time. They were the very first thing I ever fiberglassed, and they turned out pretty nicely. I will be keeping those Audio Frog components and actually putting them in my truck. They're excellent sounding speakers. I just really wanted to try something different, and I got a great deal on that Dynaudio set. So that's what's going to be replacing those, along with the little Canton tweeters that I've had. Geez, I've had probably since 2004, and I've won many competitions with them. They're just lovely sounding tweets. I will definitely be keeping those for a future project. All right, so the other main upgrade kind of focal point here, I'm going to pull back a little bit so you guys can see, are the seats. So these are Acura RSX. I think they're a 2005 base model seat. And what I like about these seats is they're not leather. Now, leather is great. I actually do love leather, but the leather from those particular cars from that time period doesn't hold up so well. And I actually really like this sort of textured fabric along with the suede. And what's really cool, it's going to be a bit hard to see here, but these suedes, and I know you can't tell so much in this light, but they're almost a dead match. And remember, this is faded a little bit, but these colors are almost identical. So I really lucked out with this type of suede that I picked out for the headliner, as well as that, because it looks almost factory. So that's the thing with this car. I want an OEM plus look. I want people to get in this car, you know, and just, if they weren't car people, not really know that I'd done anything to it. I like the sort of stealth idea, well, as stealth as possible. You know, like the back seat, still totally usable. Now, I wouldn't recommend it for long trips, although we have done them for very tall people. But there is actually quite a bit of space back there. I'll put it to you this way. I am 6'1", and I can fit back there fairly comfortably, although that would be a rare occurrence. I would ever be in the back of my own car. Probably never. So I would say that that pretty much wraps it up for the interior of this car. I am going to move on to what is my favorite piece. I suppose you would call it this car's party piece, the trunk. To the trunk. Oh yeah, money shot, baby. So this is my favorite part of the car. This is something I spent quite a good deal of time on when I rebuilt this car. I mean, really, this car is probably on its 3rd full rebuild, and I originally did this trunk, and I'm kind of, you know, scratching my head to think right now. I guess the bulk of this trunk was done for the finals that I finally won at in 2012 in Florida, but some things have changed since then. So the stuff that I originally built for this, or at least the general layout with the amps and the floor that you see there, and the subs in the back wall, plus the Alpine H800 processor living in the side of the trunk, those were all features of that build that finally secured a trophy for me after laboring away many weekends and days off for 3 months in that winter. It was hard, but it was worth it. Yeah, so essentially what we've got here, and the 2 things that have stayed consistent since those days are the subwoofers. Those are Image Dynamics ID Max 12. I believe they're V2s, they're older, and they're running in what would be considered, some people call it infinite baffle. I would prefer to call it an open baffle. Essentially, rather than having a box, they play into the trunk cavity, and that gives you very nice low bass extension, which is ideal for competition, but also just for my personal preference. And also, these subs are absolute animals. You know, I have the sub gains turned way down, and if you start to edge them up at all, it's absolutely terrifying. You feel like the glass is going to blow out, and I'm not even kidding. They're absolute monsters, but the tonality and detail of them is just, well, it's the reason I've had them so long. I've had one of these since at least 2005. I've had it in 2 different cars, and I loved it so much, I added another one. So that stayed consistent. Now, the amps have not. The original build that I did back in 2012 had 2 JL Audio amps, a monoblock powering the subs, and a 6-channel powering everything up front. So after I won finals that year, I approached DLS of Sweden, the company that manufactured the amps in this car, along with some of the original speakers that I had done at that time. And they were able to offer me a sponsorship, which was really amazing. It's every car guy's dream. So at that time, I replaced everything in the car that was not DLS, aside from the subs, with DLS equipment. And the one thing I have kept consistent is these amps, because they're awesome. So what you're looking at here, 3 of these amps are the DLS Ultimate, I believe A3s. It's been a while, so I might have this incorrect, but 3 of them are essentially twin mono amps. They're 2 amps inside one enclosure, and that gives you very nice stereo separation. They're very powerful amps. I believe they're rated at about 150 watts RMS per channel. So that's each speaker in the front is receiving that amount of power. And then this amp here, I believe the bottom right one here is my sub amp. And once again, I forget which model's with which, if it's the A3 or A6, but I think the 2 channels are the A3 and the sub channel is the A6. So we'll go with that. So that would be the A6. That is a full monoblock amp designed to run subwoofers, which it does very well. I believe currently it's probably putting out about 600 watts RMS, which, you know, when you're running your subs infinite baffle, you don't need tons and tons of power, and these are highly efficient subs, so it works very well. I absolutely love this configuration. Once again, the processor that's handling all of the room correction on this car, time alignment, phase, EQ, everything, all the sound is processed through that processor. So, you know, a digital signal is sent from the front of the car from that Android head unit, and it comes digitally into that processor, and that's what feeds the amplifiers. And what you can't see underneath this, well, there's a lot that you can't see. There's a lot going on under this rack, but there's a series of fuse blocks, relays, and then underneath the floor that these are mounted to, there's a second battery in this car. I found that when I added these amps, it was pretty necessary, because they're great amps, don't get me wrong, but they're a Class AB, so they're not super efficient. They draw quite a bit of power, and when you're sitting idle at shows or you're just playing for friends, you kind of, you know, you want that extra amp hours available to you. So so basically, as far as what I'm going to be doing for upgrades on the trunk, everything that you kind of see visually is going to stay the same. What I am going to do is a lot of the stuff I did on this car over the years, including inside the car that you can't see, I've kind of added to things and, you know, done stuff like in a sort of Apache way, since I haven't been competing a long time, and you know, I haven't kept up to the standard that IASCA, which is the sanction of shows that I was going to, would have you be judged under. I haven't kept up with that. So I'm going to rebuild everything by the book, you know, start over. I'm going to rip out all the original wiring that's left in this car and just redo everything. So I'm going to redo especially a lot of wiring and stuff and little shortcuts that I've done underneath here that you can't see, likewise inside the car. Basically, I'm going to fully gut it, rebuild it. It'll look pretty much the same, but there'll be a lot of things fixed, fine tweaks done, and just generally tidied up, made a little bit nicer, probably a little bit safer. And I'm going to go through and properly photograph everything again and make my logbook over again, because so much has changed since this original install. So with that, yeah, I guess that's pretty much it. I mean, there's a lot more that I could probably say about this car. You know, I love it. I know it's just a little Civic. It's not a rocket ship. She ain't no Mercedes-Benz, but I will always have this car. I love this car. And my whole thing is, you know, if after all those years, if when you get in your car and you turn that key and you hit the road, you still get that smile and you still love it, you know, and the car is not bankrupting you because it's falling apart and giving you a lot of problems, you know, why move on to something different? And the other thing is too, I never really had the money to just go out and, you know, buy my dream car or have someone else build my dream car. And honestly, I like the satisfaction of doing it myself. Even if you don't get it right, always the first time, guess what? You'll learn a lot and you will figure it out. And if you take the time and you set some goals and you really plan it out, you'll get great results. I always have. You'll be surprised at what you can learn and what you'll be able to achieve yourself when everybody else is telling you, oh no, you got to go see a professional to do that. You know, there's no way that you can get a good result doing it at home. Well, I don't even have a garage right now. Like I said, I live in Toronto, so my space is limited, but guess what? I still get things done, and that's what it's all about. So I hope you guys are having a great start to your summer. I hope you're having some fun working on your own projects, and hopefully setting some goals for your projects as well, because we know now that that is very important. And with that, I wish you all the best. Keep watching. I'm gonna have lots of videos coming in the Built Not Bought series for this car. So keep watching the channel, guys, and you know, if you like it, hit that like button, please subscribe, hit that bell. I'd really love that. And if you have any questions at all, comments, suggestions, you know, just leave me a little message down below. I love to read them. All right, guys, everybody take care, stay happy, stay safe.